Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, we're going to be talking about bridging the gap between music and mental health, as I am joined by Bronx-born conscious rapper, Rich Vysion. Rich has went through his own mental health journey, so what he decided to do is to bridge the gap and connect music and mental health. So we're going to be talking to him about everything that he's up to and his platform and how he's bridging the gap. So Rich, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Curtis, for having me. I really appreciate the honor of sharing my story with your prestigious audience.
Well, why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yes, to echo what you were saying, Curtis, about me, my mission really is to bridge the gap between music and mental health, which means that I'm using my music to be a catalyst for change and to empower other people to reclaim their self-worth and to remind them that there are enough to be here and to create a life of purpose and fulfillment, and also to not resort to suicide, which I have contemplated several times in the past. And I'm also a recording artist slash author slash spoken word artist, and I use all those talents and gifts that I was given by God to empower those that are struggling with their mental health.
So tell us about your journey. What made you decide to go on this mission to bridge mental health and music, and kind of tell us about your journey that led you to that.
A lot of my journey really stemmed from cyberbullying that I had faced through when I was in high school and when I first started getting into the music industry. I started putting my singles out there. I was getting a lot of criticism that was destructive, and a couple of people in my space were criticizing my music harshly to the point where I was thinking like, I wasn't enough. So I always equated my self-worth with mental health after the fact that I realized that I was traumatized by a lot of the destructive comments that they were saying about my music. And then what really got me on fire to actually be a voice for mental health is because there was been times where I would internalize those negative comments to the point where I would contemplate suicide because I didn't think I was enough to be an artist. With the passion to want to empower people with my story and change people's lives and save people's lives. And I was really came to grips with wanting to um, be that voice for the voiceless. And a lot of my past has really dictated me, adhering to those wrong voices, and now being able to, years after, do the inner work and personal development that I have been doing through the pandemic. It really allowed me to really shift that narrative of from being like victimized by those that self-sabotage to be victorious, was also the reason why I decided to name my book From Victor to Victor: Transforming Trauma into Triumph.
So talk about how you came up with the name Rich Vysion.
Well, it wasn't all me. The I had a rebrand with a mentor of mine that helped me in my career for about 4 years. And her and I decided to do a rebrand because of the fact that I was delving into a more realized version of myself, because there was some baggage that the other rap name had that came with. It came with a lot of baggage. It came from a braggadocious side of me that is was a part of my branding at one point in time. The rap name I had was Rich So Fresh, and I equated that to being stylish and fashionable and things like that. And to be honest, I was to the point where I was phasing that out a bit because I was really evolving into my artistry, being more um intentional about being a conscious, rapper versus someone who's talking about, what they have and things like that. I felt like that really wasn't fulfilling for me at the time, and me and her decided to her and I decided to do a rebrand. Like, hey, let's do something fresh. Let's do something different. Because I have a palette of new music, with a different sound, with a different message. There's some of my old material, so we decided, hey, Rich Vision, my name is Richard, and then Vision is came up with. We were just deciding on powerful words that really define who I was. I forgot the ones that we played around with or experimented with, but Vision sounded so profound. I was thinking like maybe Rich Visionary, and then we were looking up adjectives and words, and she was like, "No, Rich Vision, like that's and then we made sure that nobody had the name, and we did it with the Y, the Vysion to really stand out, make it different, and also make sure that the name wasn't taken. So we kind of just like, and for me that meant like envision, like having the vision to like be more, being meant for more than what I thought I could be. And that really resonated with me a lot to the point where I was like, I felt it in my bones. It gave me chills.
Okay, well, tell us about some of the artists that inspire you.
Yes, some artists that inspire me, NF, he's also a mental health recording artist as well in the wouldn't say mainstream, but he also has a lot of mental health topics that he delves into in his albums. I love Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, um I love the Lupe Fiasco, the Common, Talib Kweli, those artists I really am inspired by because they do talk about deep topics in their music, and I always um want to emulate that in the fact that like I want to make sure like my music is coming out authentic and speaking about like what I've been through, and nothing, nothing fabricated. This I want to just be true to who I am in my music, and those artists has really been a big inspiration for my music.
So tell us about a specific song or project where you directly address mental health and also talk about what you hope that the listeners to that song or project will take away from it.
The last project that I dropped was I'm on the other side of mental abuse. That was a EP that I dropped last quarter, November 2023. It was a time where I was facing mental abuse from a mentor of mine. Funny, it was the same mentor that same mentor that helped me in my music career was the one that I was going through a mental abuse ordeal with, unfortunately. And so I was just getting out of that space mentally, and figuring out a way to move on from that and move past that and heal from that mental abuse. Um and get over the suicidal ideation of that happening. And I started to write about, the things that are internalized about, her saying, much your God, much your savior, and things like that. And it made me feel small when and gaslighting me when I wanted to her to hold space for me when I was honestly very depressed. And the reason why I titled it on the other side of mental abuse, because I wanted to empower people who are facing mental abuse, that they have another way out of it. They don't have to stay stuck in it, And there's always the light at the end of a tunnel, so to speak, to the darkness. And I also realized that by me, speaking about these topics like mental abuse and ending the stigma, I realized that my hope is really to empower those people to actually use their voice to speak out about these things and not keep it in like I did when I was facing my dark times, or when I was facing to the point where I wanted to commit suicide. So I want people to hear the record and remind them that they have a voice and that they don't have to be shut down, and just because they're dealing with a narcissist, like they can overcome any adversity. And that project is something that I hold dear to me because it was something that I was scared to put out there because I didn't want people to know that I was going through mental abuse behind a closed door, because I really didn't think that people would believe me. And I would hope that people would use that as a catalyst to just normalize mental health and speak about it, because speaking about it is powerful, and it helps, really does free you and other people who have gone through the same demons.
Okay, everybody, it's Michael E. Cullen II.
And I'm Sesame and Carta from the All Too Real 2 podcast. We're passionate about movies, TV, and pretty much all things pop culture.
Dive into the chaos of failed sitcoms, direct-to-video sequels, and the quirky realms of cinema and TV.
Join us every Thursday for your dose of All Too Real 2 entertainment.
We'll guide you through debates like whether Howard the Duck qualifies as a superhero.
Ponder if Larry the Cable Guy could be the new Rock or Schwarzenegger.
Discover if some shows and movies should have stayed in the cutting room.
Ever heard of a sitcom featuring that dictator with the funny mustache? Well, we watched it.
We're dedicated to unraveling the peculiarities of pop culture, sometimes with awesome guests.
So, if you're into the eccentric world of pop culture,
listen and subscribe to All Too Real 2.
Available wherever you find podcasts
and on Age of Radio.
So, what advice would you give other artists who might want to put mental health in their music?
I would say go for it. Like before, I was very afraid, because I had this notion that I couldn't be considered weak. I would sometimes, I would be called the B word or sensitive and XYZ. And I just had to shut everything out. I had to shut out the naysayers, the haters, if you will, and say, hey, like mental health is important. I would say speak about it, because if it's something that you're struggling with, 9 times out of 10, someone also will resonate with that. Also because let's face it, like honestly, mental health is one of the, even though people may not consider mental health a genre, it is now considered a genre of music. And it's amazing when people speak about their mental health, because it actually normalizes the conversation, and allows more people to actually share their stories as well. So I would say 100% tell your mental health story, because by telling your story, it's not only setting you free, it's also allowing other people to step into that healing that they didn't know they needed. Just by you actually speaking about it, they might say, "Hey, a minute, hold up, I didn't know I was going through this," but since you kind of like alluded to it in your music, a lot of, even when, sometimes when I play a gig, some people are just like, I'm so grateful that you spoke about it in your music. There's no one really talking about it like you do. And I'm like so grateful to receive that compliment, because it reminds me that I'm doing something that's moving the culture forward, and I'm actually shedding a light to something that people may seem deem like a taboo topic or seasonal topic.
Well, speaking of that, can you tell us about an instance where someone has came up to you and expressed how your music and what you're doing has helped them?
Yes. Well, some offline and online, but as far as like the on the face to face, um there was a person who that um I mean, a lot of times it's just like one-off gigs in the sense of like I meet so many people in a sense in a gig, and sometimes it's hard to know who's who. But there has been times where, one person has said like, hey, like, I'm so glad that you will end the stigma, because like I had like someone, in my family, commit suicide, and it's like I'm so thankful, like it's you bringing awareness to it, and you're fighting for those people who are suicidal and things like that. So things like that are a big deal for me, because it's like it really really helps me realize that like this it's not like my work is not in vain. Like, and this even like I'll go further. There was a person who I met in church, who was a he must have been in like a preteen or something like that, and he visited from Canada with a group. So it was like several years ago when I started putting out like spoken word material. In the past, now not so much. And fast forward, I exchanged social media with him and everything like that. And then after I got home from church that same evening, I kid you not, something told me to look at my messenger, Facebook Messenger, and it was Ryan. And I looked at the message, and he said, your YouTube, like, Rich, he was like, your YouTube saved my life. And that same day, I'm like, wow, like it really brought me to like to tears, because I'm like, I never knew like how powerful my music or my material was, because of the lack of, validation, from two people that I wanted to, in a sense, impress. And I realized that no, like that's a big a deal, like to be able to have someone say that, and not even know the person from a hole in the wall. It really does signify, it really does, amplify or signifies like such an importance of being able to make, that personal connection through a digital platform. And I was just convinced after that my music has a purpose, and I can't stop. I can't stop, because there's someone else who's living through my lyrics, and if I give up on myself, there's no way that that this person or another person will be able to get up on their feet. You know what I mean, and be able to live another day. Because I noticed that too many times, there were people who were telling me that my music is getting through a tough getting them through a tough patch, a rough patch, and I never took it for granted, because I'm like, wow, like I didn't know how influential my music would become until people actually verbalized it. Because until then, I didn't really know.
Absolutely. What resources or practices would you recommend for fellow artists or even listeners who are struggling with mental health?
I would say what helped me really is I decided to take the therapy route. I know therapy is not accessible for everyone, but um, and for me, it really helped me to navigate mental abuse. I worked with a life coach. She helped me with figuring out the pieces of like not harboring resentment for the person who held space for me, and things like that. So I would say one, a therapist or counselor, someone who's actually struggled, or has expertise or in mental health. um I would say also to confide in self-care books, to be not again knowledge about struggles with mental health. What is the symptoms? What are ways to like cope with mental health? Different things like that. I noticed that there was a lot of books I read that helped me navigate and made me help me realize that you know fitness is so important to mental health, which is another tip. Fitness helped me really stay grounded and not really be in my head so much. I was able to just like be in my body versus being in my head. That helped tremendously. I also would recommend people to either meditate or just to have that moment of stillness, and also journal what you're thinking, and why you feel this way, because it all is therapeutic. Like I've written so much things through the pandemic that I still have yet to like revisit, because it was just like so much that I was going through at the time, and it really helped me to process a lot of what I was going through. And I would recommend, those cute tips is like seek a community, someone to talk to, because I noticed when I did see community, I isolated and I was literally, committing suicide by just not speaking to anybody about what I was going through. And that's also not a good thing. So one, seek community, two, seek out whether it's a therapist, a counselor, three, I would say seek um self-care book, for journaling, and five, this get into like a routine, whether it's a walking, a fitness routine or something that could just get you out of your head, because an expression that I heard from one of my life coach, Tanisha Sass, is when you're in your head, you're dead. And I really believe that, because when I was in my head, I literally was, spiritually dead, because I didn't know how to handle my depression.
Well, have you faced any challenges or stigmas or anything about putting mental health in your music through the music industry?
That's a good question. Not necessarily, but there's been times where I'm not gonna lie, like I've been very hesitant to speak about certain things in my music, because I know my music is not it's not cookie cutter. So like I I always have resistance of speaking really raw about some of my stuff, because a lot of there's some music that I write that's very visual, and it could be off-putting to other people and might turn people off. So, I always was contemplating maybe not putting that lyric in, or maybe it's too much, or maybe it's too visual, like, you know what I mean? Because I know sometimes mental health is very touchy subject, and I know some people have sensitivities and things like that. And I know like I can't just sugarcoat what I've been through and what I've experienced with my mental health journey. So, it was a stigma at one point to shot to kind of like keep quiet about it, about some of these dark things, because I'm thinking like, oh, it's way too much for people. But then I'm like, no, like, why? Why is it too much? It's me speaking about my lived experiences, and it's like no one really could judge what I've lived through unless they've lived through it, you know. So that's my take on it. It's like I was able to kind of shift the narrative about that, about not speaking, or just, keeping silent about it, to voicing my opinions and speaking about my demons, because again, it's also helping others, and also it's helping me, unclog a lot of those that mental fog that I had in my mind when I was facing those dark moments.
Sound like you have a clothing brand sponsorship now too. Tell us about that.
Well, I did at one point called Boy clothing brand. That was several years ago um when I had the other rap name Rich So Fresh. But now I'm just really my focus really is on pushing my book, because my book is really important to me, because it came it was birthed, during the pandemic, and it's really about shedding on awareness to my mental health journeys, my struggles with suicidal ideation, as well as my self-worth and self-discovery journey as well. So that's been more of an importance to me, because I know that there's healing and there's resources in the book that people can tap into, and numbers that people can dial when they're feeling like they have no one to speak to. So that's really been an integral part of my career right now and my main priority.
What else are you working on that people need to be aware of?
I'm actually working on a lot of new material. I'm dropping a single every single month till December. I dropped quite a few singles. I Will Not Commit Suicide is out right now, and it's a hot single about struggling with my suicidal my suicide attempt during the pandemic, and it's a powerful record reminding other people not to resort to suicide, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that they're here for a reason, such as I am. I'm also working on dropping another project, one or two projects for quarter 4 of this year, an EP. Not much sure how many songs will be on the record, but I want people to look out for definitely a concept EP, a powerful one about either about self-worth or just about it's definitely going to be in the realm of mental health, but I'm not sure to what capacity. But those are the main priorities and my main uh the main things that I want people to look out for is definitely the new singles and the new EP that I will drop this year.
Well, throw out your contact info so people can keep up with everything that you're up to.
Yes, my IG and my Facebook, I mean my IG and also my website to buy the book is gonna be www.richvysion.com. So that's Rich, RICHVY, like yellow, SION.com. And you can find my music there. You can also find my social media, which is also the same name, Rich VYSION on Instagram. And everything else is it's pretty much my rap name. So if you Google Rich Vision, RICHVYSION, you should find it. Either without the space in the middle or with the space or without the space. All of my links will pop up in my YouTube and everything else like that I'm promoting. But I just want to remind those listening to this podcast that, your story matters, and you're here for a reason, and that you're worthy, and that there's no one that can take away your purpose and your mission and what you're meant to do on this earth, period.
Period, ladies and gentlemen. richvision.com. Please be sure to check him out. Follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. Check out his book. Check out his music. Jump on your favorite podcast app. Give us a review. Follow us. Like us. If you have any guests or suggestion topics, Curtis Jackson 1978 at att.net is the place to send them. Share this episode to as many people as possible, especially those who might be struggling right now, because times are hard. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. And Rich, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, allowing me to share my story with your audience. I really appreciate it.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.